Bo Burnham's Inside is the most important media product of the internet age. No, this is not hyperbole. I am not making a funny. I fully believe that this hour and 30 long comedy special is the most succinct and poignant depiction of the digital age I have ever come across, detailing the various ways in which technology has both empowered and neutered us. But even within this goldmine of a special, there is one gem that to me shines much brighter than the rest and is truly maybe one of the most crucial media texts I have personally ever come across. I am of course talking about Welcome to the Internet, one of the many songs Burnham performs during the special. While it has somewhat gone viral, I think there's loads of meaning to still be extracted here, so just let's get into it. I can't show all of it here because of copyright, but Burnham's channel uploaded it in full and I've linked it in the description, so if you want to really follow along, there's your ticket. For starters, let's establish what is actually happening. Throughout the special, Burnham illustrates various facets and services of the digital era, while taking on various abstract personas, be it a random white woman on Instagram or an educational YouTuber. While this song isn't explicit about his role, it's pretty clear that he takes on the role of the internet itself, or at least some kind of personified curator of it, a humanoid figure with reflective sunglasses, giving it the appearance of not having eyes and thus being somewhat inhuman. Let's call it the Entity. Presenting itself as a host and showmaster, this entity speaks to a silent listener who, through context clues, seems to be a teenager born in the early to mid-2000s. Within this framework, the song becomes a sort of pitch, where the entity presents the listener with all the wonders and opportunities of the World Wide Web. The song starts with some basic introductory lyrics which establish the car salesman-esque personality of the entity. While nothing is immediately wrong here, we see the first glimpses of the core ideas of the song. Some better, some worse is said with such nonchalance that it imparts the idea that quality doesn't matter. It's there for you regardless of whether it's good or bad. There is no curation or regulation. The last line of this section then establishes that it's impossible to not find something you like, since we've got mountains of content. At this point, I want to quickly talk about the visual and non-lyrical aspects. As you may know, the entire special was filmed in a single one-room apartment by Burnham himself, and this song is no different. The entity sits in a dark room, illuminated by a spotlight that's firmly on itself, and surrounded by countless dancing dots, which seem to represent the vast quantity of content that is available online. This will be relevant later. These next lines follow in the same vein, however reveal more of the internet's odd nature. Whether it be something serious like the news or something bizarre like feet, it's all there for you to enjoy. More creepily, however, is the bit about the test. While it seems reassuring that you can't fail, nod or shake your head and we'll do the rest implies that whatever you do, the entity will simply find something for you to enjoy, meaning that there's no way to be free of its grip. There is no escape. The next few lines continue with this trend, progressively showing the various things the internet can offer you, both the normal and the disturbing, without as much as skipping a beat. It's interesting to note that as the song goes on and as the entity describes more and more disturbing content, the musical accompaniment gets progressively more intense, with more and more sounds being layered on top of each other. It even gets to the point where the music begins including popular sound effects from both cartoons and YouTube videos.
Welcome to the internet. What?
This seems almost like the entity trying to distract the listener from the actual implication of its words, trying to hinder them from realizing that seeing a 9-year-old dying is actually kinda terrible. This could be in reference to both the infamous effect the internet has on attention span, as well as the common tactic of distracting the audience with something energetic and shiny that many content creators, especially aimed at younger kids, employ. Returning to the lyrics, the entity lists things like racial slurs and civil rights in the same breath, almost as if to indicate that there is no moral divide here. It doesn't care who is right or wrong, as long as content is being produced, as long as discourse is happening, the entity and the internet are happy. There is no morality here. Similarly, it straight faces through all of its descriptions but then begins laughing and scoffing at the Harry Potter fanfiction. While a fun joke, it has an interesting implication as well. Death, harassment, fetishes are not worthy getting upset over, but drawings of Harry Potter having sex? That's outrageous. This could be a reference to the internet's obsession with niche content that often ends up superseding real, more relevant topics. Movements to save people's lives coexist with controversies regarding fictional genitals, and somehow the latter is more talked about. Additionally, the phrase Put your cares aside is interesting because usually you would expect the word worries. Put your worries aside. But the syntagmatic choice of the word cares almost seems to indicate that the listener and internet users in general should put not just their worries, but everything they care about aside and dedicate all their energy to engaging with the internet, only caring about the consumption of content. The next few stanzas are dedicated to an increasingly ludicrous diatribe on the various things you can do online. It touches on topics such as the harassment and subsequent bullying women regularly encounter online, or the incel to terrorist pipeline, or even the conservative disinformation chambers that exist across all social media. But beyond any single thing, I think the main point here is that it all goes by so fast, you almost don't have time to react or take it in, and certainly not enough time to properly understand what's going on. A clear parallel to the insane speed at which the internet creates and then forgets topics and controversies. Additionally, everything gets muddled together. News, death, trivia, cooking, lifestyle, war. There is no distinction between anything. It's all a giant soup of unfiltered information. The camera, zooming continuously into its face and only cutting rapidly to different positions, further indicates that this is an endless flow and that it is inescapable. We are forced to engage, forced to look, as long as we are online. The chorus now basically gives us the most summarized version of the entity's claim. The internet is a little bit of everything, all of the time. And in the wake of so much stuff, it would be criminal to just not engage, right? The catchy phrase, apathy is a tragedy and boredom is a crime, is maybe the most crucial here. With the birth of the digital age, we have eliminated all excuses to be apathetic or bored. There's always something to care about, always something to keep you entertained. And, so the entity argues, because we can eliminate those feelings, it is our moral obligation to do so. Very convenient for this entity, isn't it? After the first chorus, the entity gives the listener a history lesson about the beginnings of the web, shutting off the green dots to symbolize the severance of the online interconnectivity, very literally turning off the light of technology and catapulting us back into the very literal dark ages. As it establishes the past, the entity pulls a few rhetoric tricks. While saying that it wasn't very long ago, it speaks of a time before the towers fell, referencing 9/11. By using such an archaic and mystical expression, the entity situates this as an ancient tale, thus characterizing the pre-internet era as primitive and inferior. Which makes sense. The entity wants to sell the listener on the idea of the internet, so it would naturally want to antagonize the times before its emergence. The history lesson focuses on how everything the internet used to be was just waiting for someone to come and engage, for the listener to be born and to interact as the internet grew in tandem. This section is unnerving in the sense that the entity sings in a very familiar, almost loving tone while saying some pretty disturbing stuff. It frames the parental neglect the listener experienced as something sweet and positive, and sweetly sings about how their insides are out, presumably in reference to how many internet users overshare personal information online with little regard or care. It even mentions the listener to be watchable, a double reference to A, the trend of wanting kids to be content creators in order to have more content online, and B, the reality of the internet being used by various organizations and governments to spy on us. The familiar language continues as the entity sings under a warm projected veil of light, describing how proud it is of the listener and the growth into an online dependent person. Lines like, "It did all the things we designed it to do," emphasize that this is very much the plan. And just as the entity speaks of its own generosity, of giving the listener the world, just then, suddenly... It can't hold it in any longer. The mask falls and the entity shows us its true colors. Not a benevolent and quirky showmaster, but a maniacal madman gleefully delighting in the decay of our real-world connections. And this in turn characterizes the internet as a whole, an abstracted force that grows stronger and feeds on our attention and consumption, a malicious, ravenous network that manipulates and forces us to eternally engage with it, the violent, manic, voracious surrogate parent of an entire generation, strengthened by a global pandemic and happy to take us all in at the cost of our sanity and our energy. This is what the face of the internet truly looks like. Even as it resumes the chorus, the entity cannot hold its true form in any longer. As the singing voice deepens and the music darkens, the malice seeping out of every crevice. Realizing that that is not good for its image, the entity pulls its final trick. Every single sound, every musical note, every visual effect the song had used thus far plays all at once in a numbing cacophony meant to overwhelm you, similarly to how the vastness of the internet is meant to overwhelm you into submitting. As it sings the chorus one final time, the entity slowly turns towards the listener who is trapped with it, taking all the time it wants. The listener and us are not going anywhere anyway. So, in summation, Welcome to the Internet presents a terrifying description of the Internet's role in society. Created as a tool to connect, it now exists as an abstract entity that sucks us up and allows us nothing but to engage in a meaningless flood of information. Our existence is a mere fuel source for the restless machine of the mass media. There's something deeply troubling about how much power we have given the web over our lives, and this song represents those fears at the most extreme levels. We have no choice but to engage with a little bit of everything, all of the time. Because there is no escape. Hey all, thank you for watching. I really appreciate all the support you give me as usual, and of course a special thank you to all my patrons, including Archagent Everlasting, Daniel Garcia, Fictionape, Ignis, Paracha, Sini, Victor Perez, Cesar Londono, Trader, and Mr. Meander. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye bye.